Okay, here we are ready for another episode with Coffee with the Founder. Got my coffee cup, my coffee drink here. I'm Eddie Moore Jr., he, him, and his, founder of the White Privilege Conference. And we're here with another awesome guest, a good friend, a good colleague, a true sister, who's only got one fault. That's all. Just one fault. That's it. Other than that, she is outstanding. So, being a Cornell College grad, I just got to take a little co-college jab there, just a little bit. But seriously, we're happy to have you, Catherine. Listen, we created Coffee Talks to introduce people to one another, all the folks in our WPC family, to try to talk about the things we're doing, not only at the conference, but when we leave the conference. So let's get started with you by asking you, who are you and what do you do?
Well, thank you, Dr. Moore. Thanks, Eddie, for having me. I'm really excited to be talking to you. I'm Catherine Wigginton Green, and I'm a proud co-hawk, co-college graduate, class of '99. And you know, it's funny, when I first started at Co, everyone was talking about our big rivalry with Cornell College, but it was one of those rivalries where I think it was just on our end, because I'm pretty sure, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but I'm not sure we ever beat Cornell, at least in football. So there you go. So I work with two companies, really. We've got Point Made Films, that's our independent film production company, and we make documentaries about identity, all the different aspects and layers of it. And we've been doing that for about 15 years. And then a couple of years ago, we created Point Made Learning, which is our programming and consulting extension. So, you know, we take our films out on the road. We lead grassroots style conversations in schools and churches and corporations and all sorts of places, anywhere where anybody is ready to have a real conversation. And we use the films to get those conversations started.
All right, well, talk to me about this, because I'm a school teacher, and usually those of us in the classroom use all kinds of platforms to kind of get the lesson across. What's been your experience with the impact of film to really bring forth the kind of conversations that y'all are creating at Point Made Films and now with Point Made Learning?
You know, I think one, just especially for people who are really new to having conversations about tough subjects like race and racism, I have found in my experience when we've shown the films, or even just segments of the films, that it's a little bit easier to watch somebody else go through something uncomfortable or a learning experience, and you have a little bit of a removal. And I hope that's an entry point to then spark people's interest in wanting to have those conversations afterwards. So if I watch someone learn something, I've seen them start at kind of a point A and go through a really messy conversation, messy learning experience. Maybe they've gotten called out. Maybe they had to call somebody out, and then they've really come through it and pushed through. I hope that that models for people that they can do it too.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I want to ask you about how long it takes to put a project together. You know, what happens when you go from idea to final product? But before that, did you grow up thinking, hey, someday I want to be making these films, facilitating these films, participating in this kind of learning through films? I mean, how did you get to this point?
Yeah, well, that's, you know, like everything, it's just these series of what seem like accidents, but I think it was all, I hope, you know, laid out for me, and I just took the opportunities when they came. But no, I mean, I was always going to be a writer. I still consider myself a writer, but I went to journalism school after a few years kind of bouncing around at lots of different nonprofit jobs, trying to figure out, you know, what sort of my cause was going to be. And I had always been interested in race and identity. And then I went into journalism school, and I was going to be an investigative reporter and do really hard news. And when I got out of J school, I was writing for newspapers and magazines, and just doing a lot of other hustling of work, because, you know, I wanted to write long form. So I always really liked to dig into topics over a long period of time, to go a lot deeper than just maybe a quick news story. I wanted to uncover stuff and really make people think, so that they then wanted to do something about whatever the issues were. And you know, when you're getting paid by the word and you're writing a lot of words, it takes a long time, and it wasn't enough to pay the rent. So I was doing all sorts of other jobs. Like I was taking people's dogs for runs. This is in my early 20s or late 20s, taking people's dogs for runs in Central Park. I was living in New York at the time. I was doing fact checking and copy editing, and I mean, any kind of gig I could get. And then, and in the meantime, I was spending my time writing these really long feature stories about education, mostly, sometimes the law and the intersection of those things. And then when I was just sort of looking at the job board and these emails that would come on a weekly basis from the Career Services Center at my grad school to all of us recent grads, this company was brand new. They were making a film about transracial adoption, and they wanted someone to come in for a few hours a week and start a blog as they were making the film. I thought, oh, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. I had some experience with multiracial families. I had some experience with just, my mom used to work in an adoption agency, and she used to be a confidential intermediary that lined up birth parents and adopted people when they wanted to find their birth parents. And so I was exposed to this for a long time. So I thought, oh, this is cool. This is a lot of different topics that I'm interested in. And so I started working there. I started the blog. I would come in, you know, a day or so a week and help out. And I just was observing a lot and really involved in some really just listening to a lot of interesting conversations from all of the director, Barb Lee, who founded the company, her producers and other people on the team, the editor, the videographers. And I thought I knew something about race before I got there. You know, just because of how I grew up. I went to a school that was majority Black, so I think I thought that meant like I knew something about being Black, right, or anything. And I had written, you know, my honors thesis in college about experiences of Black Americans who volunteered in the Spanish Civil War. So I had all these things going on, and then I got to the office with this team of people who had really been in it already doing this work. And I mean, that was the first time that I'd actually heard the term white privilege. So and when it was explained to me, I thought, okay, this makes sense. But I got a whole other next level graduate education going there. And I got really fascinated with the project we were doing on transracial adoption. That was Barb Lee's film called Adopted. And someone couldn't go on a shoot. One of the producers couldn't go on a shoot once. And I volunteered. And I went and I was getting people's waters. I was running the production schedule and just observing. And I fell in love with making documentary films. And that was about 14 years ago. So that's how I got into documentaries. And then we just, you know, made a few more films after that. And every time we released a film, we weren't always necessarily having a big splash where, you know, a film festival wanted it, or you know, PBS or some other big network or streaming service wanted to pick up our films. But we knew that the people who cared about the subject matter were finding it really meaningful to watch the films. And so then that's when we just started to build out this whole other program where we'll make the film and then we'll take it around to people. We'll take it to people who want to watch it and dig into the subject matter.
Yeah, yeah. So what does it take to go from an idea to final production? I mean, I'm sure you've learned a lot over the years in reference to that, but in a nutshell, what does it take to go from, dang, this seems like a good thing, to, all right, it's finally done?
Yeah, well, I can talk about with I'm Not Racist, Am I? Because that's the most recent feature film I've made, and that was one of the bigger projects I've worked on. And I measure the process in years of my youngest daughter, because as soon as we found out that we were picked to work on the project with the Calhoun School to make the film, I was very pregnant, like the kind of pregnant where you step into an elevator and people think you're going to have a baby right there on them. And then my daughter was born, and she was about 3 or 4 weeks old when we started production, and I was bringing her with me. I had a babysitter who would come and hold her in between sets. And so now she's 7 years old. So we've been working on this project for 7 years. We started filming 7 years ago in the fall of that school year, 2012. And we finished at the end of that school year in June. And then it was we edited it. We then had a whole year after that of just working on it and building out the curriculum and figuring out where we were going to be showing the film. And now we've been on the road with it for about 5.5 years, showing it and just developing also new different kinds of programs that can go along with it that kind of sprung from the film. And the process of making it was just, there was this, seed of an idea that David Alpert had from Calhoun School. He's a third grade teacher there who went through the Undoing Racism workshop and thought, I want to have young people go through something like this. So he found us and asked us to work with him and partner on it. But he had been working on getting a grant from the Kellogg Foundation for 3 years. So this whole idea, the genesis of it, is probably about 10 years old. And here we are.
Yeah. So Point Made and yourself seem to be focusing on some issues that, like you said, can sometimes be tough to grapple with. What's your sense of the streaming world, the documentary world? It seems like now with Hulu and Netflix, you see so much coming up, but I'm wondering, is it really touching on the kind of issues y'all are touching on? What's your sense of, just kind of the market in reference to the kind of films y'all are doing, and what sets you apart? What makes Point Made different?
Well, there is so much good content out right now. I mean, lots of different ways for people to see people from all different backgrounds on screen. It is still not enough, but is a lot more than it was when we first started making the film. I find, there's great stuff too. If you want to be serious, if you want to watch something where maybe a sitcom where someone's found humor in it, there's all sorts of content to dig into, both documentary style and nonfiction and fictional, right? I would say, I'm always we're always recommending shows to people for them to understand these issues. I think with our work, I see it as an entry point for a lot of people. So let me come in and we'll show you this film. We're gonna sit there and watch it with you. So you're not gonna watch it on your laptop with your feet kicked up and a bucket of popcorn. Like, it's not really that kind of a movie, It doesn't really feel good. I don't think people are excited to watch our films. I don't think oftentimes it feels really uncomfortable for people, and in lots of different ways too. Everybody feels uncomfortable at some point for different reasons, and I think that's why we want to be there with people to watch it. Not because we don't think they can handle hard things. We know they can, but I want to be there, and we as a team want to be there with people when they go through the process of watching it and processing it afterwards. Because when you watch a film like that, and if doing it in community with other people in your organization or your school or wherever you are, it gets you talking and stuff starts to bubble up to the surface that maybe hadn't been spoken about before. And so we like to be there to help that conversation, at least at first, to help start a framework, model for people how they can talk productively about it. And we hope that by the end of one of our programs that people's interest is piqued enough where they want to maybe learn more about the workshops that were in the film that we felt like yours or People's Institute or, Liza Talusan, Center for Racial Justice and Education was in one of our bonus videos. And so we refer people to that and say, look, this was like a taste for you and sort of a broad view of all these different issues. And so what I hope happens when people watch our content is they realize how big these issues are and how much more they need to do. And then we want to send them down the path of finding all those other resources.
Yeah, that's great. Can you talk a little bit about COVID-19? First, how are you and the family doing, right? Like, how are things going there in your local community and folks around you? But also, I'm wondering, what is Point Made? Often, not that I'm excited that a pandemic has happened, but sometimes what happens when you're in crisis is artists produce things that really give us a chance to kind of grapple afterwards. And I'm just wondering, like, what is it, someone like yourself, a writer, participating now in the film production, what are you thinking? What has COVID-19 told you about the world we're living in today, and maybe what we need to be talking about and thinking about afterwards?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm doing okay. My family's okay. We're hunkered down here in Washington, D.C. Um, I was scrolling through my Instagram account and I saw, I think it was March 13th. I had dropped my daughters off. I have young girls. I have three daughters. The oldest is my stepdaughter. She's in college. And then our two younger daughters are in elementary school. And I dropped them off at school. And there was a sign out, like a chalkboard kind of sign that said, school's going to be closed for 2 weeks. And I thought, oh, what are we going to do? 2 weeks? How am I going to have the girls home at school for 2 weeks? They're 2 years apart. They fight all the time. I knew it was the right thing to do, and I was supportive. And I was also just thinking a lot about how we were going to get through those 2 weeks. I think, what are we in now? 10 weeks?
Yeah.
So, uh, it's just funny to think back on that. If only I could tell my 10-week ago self what was about to happen. And the first couple of weeks were really hard to transition. So I also do some personal training and teach spin classes and things like that. And one of the things that I remember when I went through my training was, when you try and push people, people can do hard things, but you want to push them, you have to tell them how hard they're going to have to push and for how long. And what I'm finding so hard about this is that no one's telling us for how long. We don't know, right, how long this is going to have to last, that we have to kind of maintain this very different way of life. And look, for us in my family, we've been healthy, we're safe, we're able to work, we're good. And it can even be hard sometimes. So thinking about how it is for people who are experiencing all different kinds of hardship, very real hardship, is something that I also try and be mindful of. And always just reminding myself, like, okay, since we don't know how long we have to go, to keep a little bit in reserve, to be able to keep going. So that's something that's on my mind, just on kind of a personal level. And then with thinking about this, I mean, one of the first more calming interviews I heard, that was sort of I was trying to limit all of my media content to maybe just a few things a day, right? Like listening to NPR and reading a couple of newspapers. And then, there's someone who sort of analyzes the news in a great way, Jessica Yellen, on Instagram. So I was trying to limit my exposure so I wasn't just going down the spiral of everything every day. And Dr. Fauci was on Trevor Noah's show, on his, daily social distancing show that he was filming from home. And Fauci was talking about the virus. And this is probably the second or third week in of us all really hunkered down being home in the US. And he had said, the virus is insidious. It is invisible. You can spread it to other people when you don't know if you even have it. And as he was talking, all I thought was, oh, this is a metaphor for racism and privilege, white supremacy. Like I could be spreading it to anybody, and I might not even be affected or really feeling the brunt of it, but I could be infecting other people. And I've just been thinking about that a lot. I also sometimes, when they show the picture of what the virus looks like under a microscope, and it has all these little nodes, I keep thinking of sort of racism in the center, and how this time period is also providing a moment for us to see the convergence of how every single system is failing people of color, Black people, Latinx, Asian. I mean, anybody who is, has had any kind of struggles already when they have to intersect with the healthcare system, with transportation, with housing, with education, with criminal justice. This is just making it worse, but it's also putting it all on display. And with that, I've also thought, I mean, I know there are still a very vocal minority of people that are pushing back on wearing masks, on staying home, but I was really heartened by the way that we did, at least for a moment, all come together. And we've had, I think, some elected officials are trying to do the right thing. I don't think our president is at all, right? We know we don't even have to talk about that at this point. Like, we know we're not in good hands with him, but we have a lot of other people that are really trying to do good things with the legislation passed, with emergency funds, increasing safety nets for people. In DC, they just passed, another round of legislation that landlords cannot be requiring their tenants to pay rent, right? I mean, all these things, like, we are capable of restructuring and helping people. And so if we can do that right now with this, I see some kind of possibility, right? Could we reimagine a way of being and recreate our systems and our democracy and how we interact with one another, so that if we can do this hard thing, can't we reimagine what we could do to fight racism?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was wondering if you were writing something, if you were charged to write something to someone about this time now, 100 years later, like what would be the title of your article, your piece, and really what you've learned about yourself in reference to being an artist, a writer, advocate, social justice, educator, all the things that we do. What would you be writing about to leave behind for someone who could come 100 years later and really possibly learn something from what we're experiencing now, whether we're parents, whether we're, again, educators, whether we're fighting racism, white supremacy. I'm just curious, asking my friends and colleagues, like, what are you learning about yourself during this time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What I say to myself, I mean, one of the things I'm realizing is just how much, I mean, I've always known I've needed connection. Always. I mean, I'm a super extrovert. I feed off of other human energy, more so than, I mean, I think if there's a spectrum of introversion to extroversion, I'm all the way at the other end of extroversion. What I did learn also, though, with this is that a lot of times when things get tough or uncomfortable, or I mean, even just something as simple as like my house feeling a little bit disorganized or messy, I have a lot of escape routes, right? I go to the gym, I go plan a meal with friends, I go out with girlfriends, I go for a bike ride. I have all these different things. I travel a lot for work. So there's always something else that could capture my attention. And right now, while we're hunkered down, um, I've had to really spend a lot more time with just myself, you know, and figuring out, hey, those projects you've really been wanting to do for a while, like, why weren't you doing them? Now time's not an excuse. You're home. I mean, obviously, I'm also trying to help homeschool my children and work from home, and it's busy. But I'm just sort of faced with sitting in all of my like feelings and emotions and all of these other ways that I've been able to keep myself busy and avoid some things that are hard. You can't do that right now. And I've also noticed that all of the communities that I had in place, the really strong senses of community that I had before we had to go into quarantine, are what I've really relied upon the most. So, I just different communities I have, right? So we have like I love my Point Made community, my colleagues and all the other folks that we've been able to work with over the years. And just sort of, I felt drawn to going back to people that I've had longstanding, working professional and personal relationships with, spending so much more time with my family. Even my family in Colorado that I don't get to see as often, maybe like 4 times a year usually, but just being in touch with them so much more. And you do hone in on who you really feel connected with, you know? And I have felt, it's weird, I have felt more creative. I don't always have a lot of time, but I have also felt like I'm gonna back up for a second. Something that I had realized over the past few years is that I think one of my like kind of one of my main purposes in life is to connect people. Like, I don't mean like networking. I mean build it, like strengthening connections and friendships, and having people who I know would love each other, meet each other, and just create community wherever I can. And I think I've always been kind of natural at that, and I love it. And I found that that's a role that I've been trying to also fill. I'm sorry, I got another call. I had to stop it. It's a role I've been trying to continue filling even in this space, because I know a lot of people who are, I mean, I have a lot of friends who don't have a partner, don't have children. A lot of them are feeling really isolated at home, and just ways that we can connect with one another in being together in lots of different ways, and what can connection look like.
Yeah. Now, are people asking you, like, how did you get started? I want to do what you want to do. I mean, I'm wondering, like, what's your advice to young people who may talk about or want to consider filmmaking, social
Mm.
justice, teaching, facilitating conversation? What's your advice to folks who are, interested in doing the kind of work that you're doing, to get started, to get better at, to start focusing on that? Because as you mentioned, sometimes we don't get there in the way that we thought we'd get there. But now as we look back and someone says, I'd love to do what you want to do, love to do what you're doing, what should I do now? What's your advice to folks who have some interest in doing the kind of work that you do?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's funny. It kind of takes me back to the other question you answered, which one thing I didn't, or you had already asked about, sort of the process of doing a film or making a project. And when I first started out, I always would just feel like I don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm going to mess this up. It's too big. There's no way. I don't know what I'm doing. That's the biggest thing that plays out, the tape in my head over and over again. And what I've learned now after having done this for a while is that that feeling does not go away for me, at least in my, like, personally, that's part of my process. And I realized that's the process. So I even found, I was cleaning out some old emails. And when I first started making I'm Not Racist, Am I had this email where I had sent to Barb, my boss and our founder, and she had executive produced the film and she was kind of advising on it. And I had just shown her a cut of it, and I thought, this is a mess. I don't know I can't do this. And I remember saying to Andre too, like, everybody knows what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And Andre, Robert Lee, who made the Prep School Negro, and he worked with me on Am Not Racist, Am I also, but he had a lot more experience. And he was coaching me too, like, just trust the process. And so that's a big part of it too, is that what I've realized is that if there is a story that you want to tell, if you want to get into filmmaking or writing or anything, that everyone is a storyteller. Everyone's a writer. If you write something, you're a writer. If you want to make a film, make a film. Like, it's so accessible now, much more so than even when I started, that to just follow those, ask questions, dig into it, follow your curiosity. And at least for me personally, I've realized I'm never going to not feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that actually drives me to try and keep digging out and finding more. I also realized I'm reading this book called The Overstory by Richard Powers, and it's giving me, like, it's filling me up a lot. It's about trees and just sort of it's fiction, and it's about people, but the trees are the main event, and the people come in and out of these trees' lives, and so you have this sense of longevity. And one of the lines in it that really made me stop and wanted to reread was, people will always try and solve their problems in your life. And that has really helped me think through too. Like, I'm always polling people and trying to figure out, should I do this? Should I do that? And am I good enough? And do I belong here? And should I be doing this? And oftentimes the advice I'm getting is advice that people would just give to themselves. And so I have to also just follow what I want to do. And just on a practical level, being open to opportunities and just jumping in and trying to learn as many different things as you can. So I've always tried to make myself indispensable in every job I've had. So, okay, you hired me as a writer to write this blog for Point Made Films, but I'm going to start tinkering around with the cameras, and I'm going to take an editing class and learn how to do video editing, and just kind of try and be the person that can do lots of different things, so that people want to keep me around.
Yeah.
And that way I can keep learning,
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that. People will always try to solve their problems in your lives. I'm gonna definitely. I appreciate that. I'm gonna keep reflecting on that. Let me ask you about the next 10 years. What's on the horizon? Are you writing anything? Are you planning anything? What can we expect out of you over the next decade?
Yeah. Okay, I love that question. That's exciting. Also, if I say it out loud, maybe I can it'll help me
That's
bring it
right.
to fruition. Bring it into existence. So I have, there are some other films that we want to make, that I want to make. One looking at um, sexism and feminism, but hopefully told in a different way that isn't just about white feminism. And we have a team of us that have been kicking around some ideas about how we could all collaborate together on that. But that's like, we're thinking about that, right? That's a little bit down the ways. I mean, making the film is just, you have the idea and then you got to find the money, and that's a huge process too. But I have been doing a lot of writing. So I have been working on some children's books, writing the books that I want my girls to be able to read. And that's, we've been doing a little bit of that here while we've been at home, where I can write a little bit each day, and then they read it, and then they give me some feedback, and it's fun. They're kind of like my co-writers right now. And those are, I hope, something that will come out before 10 years. And then I have another book that I've really been working on a lot that I, it's, I don't have a contract on it or anything yet, but I've been working on this book with the title "Make Good Choices Even When No One Is Looking." And this all sprung from the fact that I realized that there's so much, not only to those who are around young kids, or have had that experience, we know there's a lot you can learn from kids, right? Out of the mouths of babes, we talk about it all the time. What I've found is that the way that I hear my kids' teachers, or some of the really great shows for young kids, the way they explain concepts to young children about how to cooperate, how to be resilient, how to be adaptable, how to make good choices, have integrity. The way they explain these concepts to children, I think, are in ways that a lot of us adults really could have a chance to sort of relearn or reflect on and help, because I think we make things so complicated. And the way that we teach these things to children is, some of them times they're complicated subjects, but they explain them in a simple way that I think can sort of almost serve as mantras for adults. So I'm working on I've sat in some classrooms and looked at ways that teachers are teaching kids. I also am a huge fan of Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and the way they teach kids things. And I've used those lessons actually to give friends advice before. So it's sort of taking a combination of how do we teach these concepts to kids, and how can we learn them ourselves as adults, and then talking with psychologists who can shed light on why we actually sometimes don't make the best choices. So that's my favorite project that I'm doing right now.
Well, don't make me sing my favorite Daniel Tiger song. If you're feeling mad and you want to roar, take a
deep breath and count to 4.
I love it. Yes, that is so good. That is so good.
It's so good. And you know what? Let me tell you, we have, it's hard with kids right now, right? They're out of school. We're trying to get outside every day. They're not getting as much activity and exercise, and all sorts of, intense things are happening sometimes in the house. And I'm coming up with creative ways of trying to coach my kids into better behavior. And so they're way past Daniel Tiger age, but one of my kids lost her temper in a pretty big way recently. And I made her sing that song 10 times every day for a week. I'm like grasping at straws here for ways to get them to behave.
Well, I tell you, Daniel Tiger is playing often with a 2-year-old here, but
yes,
like you said, some of those lessons are really good lessons, and I like that idea of taking some of what is so simple for young people, we as adults can forget in our complicated lives. So we look forward to that. Is there a place where people can find you and your writings if they wanted to follow you or learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, they can always go to pointmadelearning.com, because a lot of what I'm doing ends up there, right? That's the bulk of my time and work. But I also have, and there you can find like all of my Twitter and where I have some stuff going on there. And then I have a Medium page where I try and do some writing and test out some ideas and articles and things like that. So that's at medium.com/CE Wigginton.
Got it. All right. Well, I've been doing what I call my lightning round, just some random choices for you, or topics for you to respond to in 15 seconds or so. So let's take you through the lightning round. All right?
All right. I'm ready.
All right. So just so we're clear, Cornell College or co-college?
Come on, co-college.
All right. Are you going with Cardi B or Nicki Minaj?
Oh. Nicki Minaj.
All right. Are you going with Netflix or Hulu?
Oh, Hulu.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. How about Will Smith or Denzel?
Will Smith.
All right. How about Whitney or Tina Turner?
Oh. Ooh. Yeah, I'm going to go with Whitney. I grew up with her.
All right. How about Beyonce or Janet Jackson?
Beyonce.
How about Justin Timberlake or Justin Bieber?
Justin Timberlake. Too old for Justin Bieber.
How about NWA or Public Enemy?
Oh, NWA.
All right. How about Taylor Swift or Lady Gaga?
Lady Gaga.
Let me ask you, if you were in a lip sync championship, you got one song to sing to win.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be your go-to song?
Well, you know, I was in a lip sync battle championship at a party that someone threw, and my husband and I did together, and I think people decided that we won. We did like a mashup. I was Vanilla Ice, and I did Ice Ice Baby, and he did Can't Touch This MC Hammer.
Wow.
So that I'm gonna stick with that. It went well. And there's video to prove it, hidden.
Oh, now that's a link we'd love to post to your interview for folks to check out.
Yeah, I'll think about that.
Yeah, think about that. One last quick question. We've been asking people because some folks have had some extra time to watch some things, read some things, listen to some things, and we've been creating what people have been watching, reading, listening to during quarantine. Is there anything you would add that you've been watching, listening to, that you've discovered? It could be something you learned something from, or something that just, took you away.
Okay. Well, you know, I've been watching Asian Americans on PBS. So that's been really great. I keep pushing that on people, not only because it's AAPI month, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, but there's just so much history in there that most of us don't know. And then kind of like more of a fun one is Black AF on Netflix. So I know Hulu, like I haven't been watching a lot of stuff on Hulu, which surprised me. And I've introduced my kids to I Love Lucy, which has been kind of fun. And that's on Hulu, but we've been watching Black AF, and that has been, that's a lot. A lot to take in.
Well, Catherine, I've always appreciated Barb, yourself, Brother Andre, partnering with me, supporting me, the conference over the years. And we're so happy you could come on and talk a little bit about just your journey and your work. And anytime you want to be a part of WPC, you're always invited. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you asked, and I can't wait till we get to see each other in person again.
Yeah, so here's a little Wakanda hug. Until then.
Yeah, that's right.
Take care of yourself. Good to see you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too. All right, bye-bye.